Welcome back to the Red Zone Podcast, episode 5. I got a good spread of stories today. We're going to be talking about a little bit of everything, if you know what I mean. Got some football, got some American football. I like to touch on the football and the football, if you know what I mean. Then we got some Pels and some recruiting action as well. So let's get into it. First up, the Pelicans are struggling, which is unfortunate. I was so excited last week. I came to you guys opening my heart, explaining why I believed in this Pelicans team, why I knew they were the next team up and they were going to win the West, and they were about to show why they were the dominant power in the West coming up at the moment. And then they lost 4 straight games and fell to 3rd in the West immediately. Obviously, the keynote above is a bit of a joke. The Pelicans are not a bad team. The Pelicans are a pretty good team. But it is just a bit funny with the way it happened. The way that we came down like immediately after reaching the mountaintop and getting to the 1 seed, you just kind of knew, hey, this could be I'm a bit worried. There could be like a coming to earth moment soon. And I think I was both prepared for that and not prepared for that because previous Pelicans teams had me ready for that. Anytime anything happened positively in the past for the Pelicans, I was ready to be miserable. I knew that it couldn't last for long, but this team was looking to be a bit different. And then, we go on this rough slide. Now, the Pelicans, like I said, still 18-12, still 3rd in the West, and some losses to some pretty good teams, if we're going to be real. First couple losses came in Utah. It was a rough couple games. Probably, to be fair, didn't deserve to win either, but should have won the second at least. Could have won both. That's a rough matchup for us. I'm not sure what we do if we match up with them in a playoff series. Because if we don't have people who can hit three-pointers, who are not great three-point shooters as we've seen. So basically just saying, hey, we need to get lucky. I'm not exactly sure how we beat Utah. Now the Phoenix one, maybe even a bit more frustrating. Not as concerned about the matchup per se, because now in our 3 matchups against Phoenix, we got to a huge lead in all 3 and won 2 of them. So I'm not totally bothered by the matchup. It was more the fact that we let Devin Booker score 58 points. We let the Suns come back from a 24-point deficit in the second half. And we let the losing streak, keep going. And it's gotten to the point where now it's just creeping a bit. And when we faced the Bucks, I don't think anybody really reasonably expected that streak to stop. That one's understandable, right? Close game. Just didn't have what we needed late. We were always a bit behind them. They're a better team than us, so there's not really a ton of reason to be disappointed there. That was, of the 4, obviously the most understandable one. Ends our little road trip too. We've got an easier stretch coming up, so you've got to feel good about this. And despite the fact that the sky is not falling, obviously, the team is still good. There are some problems that are here that cannot be denied. Obviously, everyone knows not having Brandon Ingram is a huge deal. The Pelicans need Brandon Ingram to get back soon. His injury is gotten to a point where he's week to week now. When he originally started day to day, he's listed with a toe contusion. Who knows what that even means at this point? he's been out for 3 weeks now. Doesn't seem like he's going to be back soon. He's missed so many games. It's so hard to look at this team and understand what they are without Brandon Ingram. You just really wish he could get back sooner rather than later, because this is the type thing that derails your season. And I think even if the Pelicans lose Brandon Ingram for another month, they're a playoff team, and I don't think that's a doubt. But this is a team that could fight for a 1, 2, 3 seed if they're fully healthy and if they're being coached well and if they're staying consistent in terms of their personnel, which has been impossible with the injuries this year. I mean, the amount of games that CJ, Zion, and BI have played together, I think it's 5 or 6. I'm not totally sure, through 30 games, which is obviously not optimal. But the problems that are more fixable are the rotations. The biggest example that made me absolutely livid versus Phoenix was when Devin Booker scored 58. Late into the third quarter, Willie Green still put Jose Alvarado on Devin Booker, despite the fact that he's 6 inches shorter, was getting absolutely cooked. And the fact that earlier in the game, when Dyson Daniels was defending him, Booker wasn't getting nearly as easy looks. The change just took so long to be made, and it didn't even have to be Dyson. You could have put Herb on him as well. Herb has length that Alvarado can't offer. So I've seen a lot of these interesting, like, individual personnel decisions in the rotations that have really, really concerned me recently. And not to the point where I think, oh, well, is Willie Green not a good coach? But it is to the point where I realize Willie Green has a lot to learn. And with Willie Green and this team in their current state, they are not a contender for a championship. There's so many holes in their game. Speaking of, the offense without Zion on the court is unwatchable. It is one of the most miserable things I've ever seen watching Pelicans basketball, because you actually know that the team is good and that we win games, but I have to watch several minutes per game of a team that is completely unable to do anything on offense besides CJ isolations and hero ball. CJ McCollum is on my last nerve. He is miserable to watch. He is a decent player, and I respect him. He's a great leader. I respect what he's brought to the team. I'm happy that we traded for him. I am not happy that I have to watch him play basketball. He is the most selfish... Oh, God, I don't even know the right words to use. Some of the shots that he takes make me rethink, do I enjoy watching basketball? There was a shot he took in the Bucks game where he was 5 feet behind the line in like a 2-possession game, and he just chucks a 3 right out of a timeout. And it's like, are you bought in? Do you really want to win? Because you know deep down that does not win us games. You know that you're not that guy. You know that you being the guy does not give the Pelicans the best chance to win. So I've really gotten tired of watching CJ McCollum sabotage this team over and over and over again, just for him to have one good game every 3 weeks that gives us a win versus a mediocre team that we would have had anyway. We won't really know what we've got with CJ until Brandon Ingram gets back and we get to see how those 3 function consistently. They've still, in their 2 years together, only had 6 games together, 7 games together, something like that. So we've yet to see what they operate as a trio. We've yet to see what they operate like as a trio consistently. And I will hold out hope for that. But I also doubt that CJ McCollum will be willing to take the shots, the needed amount of shots for a third option as opposed to a first option, because he just loves taking 20 shots a game, right? The team also really can't shoot the three. And I'll keep this short because I'm tired of talking about what I don't like about the Pelicans. This team's good. They're the third in the West. They're they're one game off the first seed. There's a lot of positives. I don't want to just focus on the negatives all day, but the team can't shoot threes either. They're 29th in three-pointers attempted. They're somewhere in the middle in percentage. They're a below average three-point shooting team. Despite this fact, Zion Williamson has the 8th most three-point assists in the league. Among those teams, the Pelicans are by far the lowest or the worst three-point shooting team. If we had shooters on this team instead of Herb Jones, instead of Najee Marshall, instead of Larry Nance, instead of Jonas Valanciunas, if we had shooters instead of Jose Alvarado, instead of Devontae Graham, we just don't have great three-point shooters. And it's like the biggest thing that Zion needs as a teammate. So the roster construction, which I've never thought was perfect. I've always had my disagreements with David Griffin. This is not a recent complaint. There's just some holes in it, despite it being a good roster overall. Now, you're still 15th in offensive rating, 6th in defensive rating. So you're a good team. You've got positives. You're a contending team. When Brandon Ingram gets back, you'll be in good shape, and you've got an easier stretch of games coming up. This is not a doom and gloom situation. Pelicans fans should be happy with where the team can go from here. But I do not think it is good to get your hopes up in terms of contending this year. There are just too many holes in the roster that I see, and I would be really surprised, impressed as well, but mainly surprised if the Pelicans were able to shore these up this year. Lionel Messi did it. He won the 2022 World Cup over France on penalties. 3-3 final score. Argentina won penalties 4-2, I want to say. What a game. One of the best games I've ever seen of football or football. Just everything that's beautiful about how soccer is so unique from every other sport. 2 goals early felt like a death sentence, especially when these teams were so even going into the match. A lot of books had this game as a literal pick'em going in, which is so rare for a national team game, to have 2 teams that are generally perceived as like being on equal footing. That 2-goal lead for most of the match, really, it seemed like a death sentence. And look, let's talk about the first 2 goals, really. The first penalty, Ousmane Dembele fouls Angel Di Maria as he's dribbling into the box from the left side. That was a terrible penalty decision for me. Way too soft. I didn't see a single replay angle that made me think it was anything more than a nudge that probably wouldn't have been given as a foul anywhere else on the pitch. So I really didn't like the foul, or the penalty decision, but I also think there was no reason for Ousmane Dembele to be playing as close to Di Maria as he was when he was already behind him and was not able to challenge at all. So there's a bit of blame to go there, despite the fact that I don't really think it should have been a penalty. Either way, though, Messi dispatches the penalty, and he really, this World Cup, showed me a lot from the penalty spot, because he's not been someone throughout his career who's been renowned for being a perfect penalty taker. You know, he's a fine penalty taker. He's not bad, but he's also not one of the greatest ever. And he, all tournament, just was fooling these keepers, diving left, right, and he just waits for them to go and then just finesses it to the other side, and it's always a tight little finish, always totally safe, so much distance between him and the keeper, and he puts it in, and it's 1-0. Later in the half, another great counter initiated by Messi and Alvarez. Some nice play on the right side to get it started. They get it to McAllister, who's through. McAllister with one of my favorite plays of the entire tournament, squares it to Di Maria on the left side from the center with a ball that you could not have made it more perfect when he was in such a tight, crowded situation. And he just sets it up for Di Maria to finesse it right past Lloris. Great finish, really, although I expected Di Maria to finish that. Di Maria is the type player, if you give him that type chance, he's going to make it look easy. Nice finish, bounced over Lloris, and it was 2-0. And watching the game, it felt like it was over. Because I had a sneaking suspicion going in, my favorite to win was Argentina. With that, it really did feel like it was over. And it wasn't just after the goals. The second goal was scored in the 36th minute. And for 30 minutes after that, the game felt dead. France wasn't threatening. Argentina still looked the better team. But eventually, France, I guess it kicked in. This was it for France. And so the last 15 minutes was one of the most intense stretches of football I have ever seen in my life. It all kicks off, counterattack, Kolo Muani goes into the box, gets fouled by Nicolas Otamendi. Such a stupid foul. Otamendi, I had to watch Nicolas Otamendi as a Manchester City fan. What a stupid player at times. And I'm sure even Nicolas Otamendi fans would be fine with me saying that, because, man, he makes some of the most brain-dead decisions you will ever see in a soccer match. Fouls Muani right on the edge of the box. He has inside position, too. He has an angle on the keeper. There's nothing that Muani can do without a superhuman effort. And he fouls him anyway. And Kylian Mbappe dispatches it past Emi Martinez, and the game was on. And then 1 minute later, Muani plays a nice little 1-2 with Mbappe, and Mbappe spanks this ball from an acrobatic position. He's on 1 foot, angled sideways, taking it off the half volley, and just crushes this ball past Martinez for the second goal. And in a matter of 2 minutes, it was even. And at that point, it felt like, how is Argentina going to stop France? How do you survive with this type of momentum against you? And there's still 15 minutes left in regular time, and this game kicks off. This was when the real match started, the 80th minute, really. And for the rest of regular time, France had the heads up. France had the chances. And even through extra time, France was the slightly better team. But Argentina on the break, chaos after Lautaro comes on, gets a shot off. Messi's in the right spot, taps it in. Now Argentina's up 3-2. Then other side, Tagliafico gives up a penalty, a crazy handball. Mbappe takes it past Martinez. You're tied again. There's even more chances. The last 40 or so minutes of this game were just some of the most end-to-end beautiful stuff you'll see in a football game. And it wasn't perfect, but man, was it entertaining. The pens came, and you really thought, once it got to pens, like, how is France going to win this? Argentina had already won on pens. Hugo Lloris is a really, really poor keeper in terms of penalties. Emiliano Martinez is one of the best in the world in terms of penalties. So it felt like even from this moment, it was kind of against them. But Mbappe goes up and just dispatches his first like it's nothing. Kylian Mbappe did everything he could And everyone knows that. But his teammates let him down. Argentina wins 4-2 on penalties after Messi and 3 others dispatch theirs. And Messi's crowned. He reaches the mountaintop. He attains the thing that he must have thought about most throughout the majority of his career. He was able to do it all at a club level from an early age. He was able to win the Copa America later in his career. The World Cup was the thing that evaded him, that he wanted to get so badly. And finally, with his best team and his best performance, he wins the Golden Ball, wins the World Cup, harnesses the essence of Maradona, and repeats for Argentina to give them their 3rd championship, their 3rd World Cup, their first since 1986. A beautiful, beautiful storyline. Really nothing you could have done to improve it. Even the other way around, what a storyline it would have been. Kylian Mbappe, a hat trick in the final, all late in the match to secure his 2nd World Cup. Either way, you really had some amazing potential storylines, and we got the even better one, in my opinion, where Messi is crowned as the greatest ever. And look, if you knew soccer, Messi did not need to win this to be the greatest ever. Messi was already the greatest player ever. Messi's Messi. He's the best. But there were always going to be people who said, why couldn't he win the World Cup? And he took all that doubt away. Now, Messi was not the most amazing part of this tournament or this final for me. That honor goes to Kylian Mbappe, who showed that he is so special and just a total freak of nature. One of the most unbelievable players I've ever seen in any sport. A bona fide winner with an unbelievable mentality, who is able to contribute to every single match he plays with such an unbelievable consistency. Something the like that we have never seen before in soccer, and that's not an exaggeration. You'll hear it in a second. The 2nd goal was unbelievable. To strike the ball with that much power from that position and put it past Martinez, who was still got a hand to it, but just couldn't stop it with how strong it was. That was really vintage Mbappe. That was the type goal that only he can give you. To get in the position, to play the 1-2, to strike it with such conviction. And he's not the same type of player as Messi, but that's almost what makes it beautiful. He had just... He didn't win, but he showed me he was a winner, if that makes sense. Heartbreaking that he wasn't able to win the World Cup, because, man, he deserved it as much or more than any other player on the pitch. And this World Cup, I think, just solidified that Kylian Mbappe is the greatest player of the next generation, and he always is going to be. Kylian Mbappe is going to be one of the greatest attackers in football history, no matter how the rest of his career pans out. Career goal contributions before the age of 24. This means for select players, this is their entire career for both club and country teams, counting assists and goals. Before the age of 24, Kylian Mbappe has scored the 2nd most goals and assists of any player in football history, not counting penalties. The only player he is behind is Pele, who is in his own stratosphere. When you discount Pele, he's 1st without penalties, 2nd with penalties. The only player he trails overall is Neymar at 375. Kylian Mbappe has 370. Next up is Ronaldo Nazario with 293. Messi at 281. Those are two of the greatest young players of all time, maybe the two greatest to this point. And Mbappe has him outscored by 80, playing in Europe the whole time. Man, what a player. He really is next up. And the only question at this point is, will he be able to be greater than Neymar, Cristiano, Messi? That's all there is to it, because he's already greater than everybody else in his generation. All in all, though, one of the better and more competitive World Cups I think that I've seen of the three that I've watched. It is a shame that the format's being changed right after you see this, though, because this World Cup showed why the World Cup is so great as a competition. And I think going to 48 teams is going to really drag down the quality of the tournament. But who knows? Maybe I'll be wrong. We will see. Now, this is something that is a bit unfamiliar to the Red Zone at this point. We're talking about the Saints, baby. We are talking about the New Orleans Saints. Unfortunately, fortunately, however you want to think about it. The Saints beat the Falcons 21-18, and the first thing I'm going to guess that anybody is thinking, who cares? And you'd be right. I don't care, except for the fact, and this may catch some of you by surprise, this game and the Saints' 2 wins over the Falcons this season tied the all-time series record for Saints-Falcons. Yep. This is the first time since the 1970s that the Saints and Falcons have been tied in their all-time series record. It's the first, potentially sets up for the Saints to take the lead for the first time ever next season. I don't care about this Saints team. The Saints are really, really bad. The Saints probably won't be good again for a very long time. But man, if you couldn't get me to stop caring about Saints-Falcons no matter what happens, every single matchup, you can bet I'm going to be smiling like the Grinch if we beat them. Especially if we beat them to get to even in the all-time series. That's the last thing they have left on us. And trust me, the Falcons know. So I was super excited to see us crawl that gap back, especially in one of our worst years ever. Because we've been going 1-1 with the Falcons a bit recently. We've been kind of trying to close that gap for a bit. And in our worst season in almost 2 decades, we get there. So it's a bit funny how that works, right? Regrettably, though, you do have to talk about the Saints this season and not all time, which is unfortunate. We are really, really bad at football. That was a win against the Falcons. Man, it should have been a lot more comfortable. Every single game we win, we scratch and claw and just barely just get to that win. And it's like, not only are we not good, but we're just miserable to watch as well. There's no future. There's no promise. There's no, over the hump like there is for a young team like Jacksonville or Chicago. You're just bad. And you're not going to be good anytime soon. And your roster is not great. And it's going to get more expensive. And you're going to get older. And so there's just not many positives for this team right now. And I just can't sugarcoat it. We're in a terrible spot. We're in one of the worst spots of any franchise in the NFL right now. It'll be interesting to see what happens to the coaching staff this offseason. From all reports, it does seem like the Saints are going to retain Dennis Allen. I can't explain why. I don't know why. I don't really think there's an explanation. Dennis Allen is proven throughout his career to be a losing coach. I don't need to go through the record. You can go find it yourself. It's very bad. He's not coached one season in his career. This is not his first time around the block. We will never win under Dennis Allen as a head coach. Dennis Allen's a great coordinator. Good for him. I was super happy with what he did for the Saints throughout our winning in the past decade. Or half decade. But he is not a good head coach. And that's fine. It's hard to be a good NFL head coach. That's why there are so few good ones. There's just not a lot of good head coaches in the NFL. And Dennis Allen's one of the worst. And that's fine. He can go be a great defensive coordinator somewhere, and I'm sure he will. I'm sure he's going to have a successful rest of his career once he gets fired, whether that's this season or next season. And it'll be interesting to see if they make decisions lower in the staff. I think Pete Carmichael is probably the most likely to go. The offense has been atrocious. The fact that Alvin Kamara has not gotten more touches more consistently is embarrassing and stupid and inexplicable. It makes me sad to talk about. This team genuinely makes me sad to talk about. Alvin Kamara got 22 touches Saturday, which was good for his most in the last 4 games, which is crazy. It literally just doesn't make sense. I'm speechless in that regard. We also, in the future, we're going to need to figure out a way to keep the receivers healthy. That's going to be a big part. We've got a great receiving room in Michael Thomas, Olave, and Landry. Unfortunately, they just literally cannot stay healthy. We've got Rashid Shaheed coming up as well. So this is a very talented receiver room that can't stay healthy and doesn't have a quarterback. Don't even get me started on quarterback. Obviously, we need to find our next quarterback because it's very clear that Andy Dalton's not that guy. It's very clear that they don't want Jameis Winston to be that guy, and he probably won't be that guy. So we'll see. Maybe they ride out Andy Dalton for another year, and maybe they ride out Jameis Winston for one more year. It's not going to be super consequential whether we're good or whether we're mediocre or bad next year. We'll see. We won't be good. And that's the sad truth that I've had to accept. We probably won't be good for a bit. But that's what happens when you keep pushing the rock down the road and compete for 15 years straight. You know, that's a side effect, and that's fine. But we got to figure out a way to be better than this when we've got as much talent on our roster as we do. Big couple days for LSU recruiting, right? National Signing Day today, the 21st. Desmond Rick's commitment tomorrow on the 22nd. Don't even get me started on how that works. I don't understand why Desmond Ricks can commit tomorrow, even though National Signing Day is today. I don't really understand why it works like that, but hey, it does. You know, that's just how it goes, though. LSU sort of recently has they finally got the ball moving in the transfer portal for a bit. I think not me, because I knew that it wasn't reasonable to be scared of something like this, but there were some fans that were starting to get worried about the transfer portal and the fact that all of our traffic was outgoing as opposed to incoming. And I think there's obviously that would be a concern, but it was just too early to be worried about that stuff, right? And so in the past couple days, we get Aaron Anderson, Jalen Lee, Braden Swinson, and Paris Shand in the portal. And we'll go through them one by one. Aaron Anderson is a 5'9 wide receiver out of New Orleans, played at Edna Carr, ran a 10.77 40, and was a 5-star commit to Alabama in 2021. Aaron Anderson decommitted from LSU because he committed to Ed Orgeron. And he said throughout the process, he had told LSU, if Ed Orgeron's not here, I'm going to flip. Ed Orgeron got fired. He flipped. Didn't happen the way he wanted it at Alabama. I'm not sure how reasonable it is to expect to get a ton of time as a freshman. But hey, he probably heard something from the coaching staff that got him looking our way. And man, is he a big piece for LSU, right? Not to mention his effect in the wide receiver room. I think in the return game, it's eminently obvious that he will be the guy. He's the type, like archetype, that you love to see on a punt return, right? 5'9", 180. He's not tiny. He's just short. But he's got that burst. He's got the side-to-side movement. He's quick. He's also fast. And there's a difference. My dad always told me this. There's a difference between quick and fast. Aaron Anderson's both, though. And so in Aaron Anderson, you get a huge boon to the return game, which you needed. 20 return yards on the whole year, which is a joke. He'll be the starter day one. You'll also see maybe he'll be out on the kick returns. It's tough to know. Normally you want someone a bit bigger, but he's not small. So, if he feels he can take that type of hit, he could be the answer there as well. It'll be very interesting. Aaron Anderson, though, the biggest name for sure of the names, the recent slew of names that came in through the transfer portal. Next up, in terms of the importance, I suppose, is Jalen Lee. 6'3", 295, 4-star recruit out of Watson, played at Live Oak, and originally committed to Florida 2 years ago. And obviously, a lot's happened at Florida since he came there. Dan Mullen's been fired. Then you got Billy Napier. It's not gone great for him. So he's decided to come back to LSU, and that's huge. Defensive tackle depth was maybe the biggest problem this year on the roster, aside from, cornerback. So he's someone immediately who will slot in behind Mekhi Wingo, and Mason Smith. And he'll be an immediate third option who's played, who has experience, who's physical, who's big, who can have impact, and has a couple years of eligibility. So it'll be very interesting. What's actually funny is a comparison that he got coming out of high school in terms of as a prospect. Glenn Logan. So if you can gather from that, an athletic space eater who's not slow, who's strong and fast, who when he gets around blocks causes havoc in the pocket, but is also a huge weapon in the run game and is not just getting bulldozed by these big SEC offensive tackles. So I'm excited about this. This was a big one. You get another D-line commit, Paris Shand. And this one's a bit spicier, a bit more interesting, right? Some mixed feedback on the Paris Shand commitment. Paris Shand's a 6'5", 250 D lineman out of Arizona. And actually, let me check his actual measurements with Arizona, because I think those could be his high school measurements. I'm looking at more recent pictures of him, and I won't lie, it really doesn't look like that is his weight. Okay, well, hey, the Arizona website doesn't have his weight either. That's interesting. Well, still, last year had 23 tackles, 12 solo tackles, 2.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. a very solid season as a sophomore. You know, he's not changing the world for Arizona, but he's very effective. And he's a very big guy. He's definitely someone who will primarily play on the edge, maybe in that Ali Gay role. But he's someone you could shift inside on passing downs, sort of like you did in the past with Mason Smith when he was younger. So it's gonna be interesting, really. He's got a very interesting build. He's a very interesting prospect, and he's someone that I'm excited about, even though I'm not sure what we will get from them. And then finally, the third of the D-line prospects, another one that it's very obvious what their role is, whether they're going to slot in to the team. Braden Swinson, transferred from Oregon to LSU. 3-star recruit out of Georgia. 6'4", 250. He will be there to play the role of B.J. Ojulari. And who knows whether he'll be the starter. Maybe it'll be someone like Savion Jones. Maybe we'll get another recruit or another commitment that'll end up being there. But he will get time in that role. And he had, not so bad of a season with Oregon. He showed flashes, 3 sacks, double-digit tackles for a loss. So there was performance there, and there was performance from all of these guys, really. So you're getting a lot of guys who know how to play, who could provide depth, and who knows, maybe they'll end up as starters. We'll see. But at the very worst, you got a ton of depth at one of your weakest areas on the team. So that's something to be happy about. Without a doubt, it's something to be very, very excited about. Now, in terms of high school recruiting, LSU got a bomb today. Mostly in terms of National Signing Day, LSU held pretty steady. Held serve, really. We had Daylon Austin go to Oregon. And then we had Kamorian Pimpton come to LSU. And what a name. What a great name. Oh, I'm going to love saying that for the next few years. He is a 4-star tight end out of Fort Worth, Texas. And man, he is a big get. I am very excited about this guy. 6'6", 225. If you saw his wingspan, the size of his hands, he really just does physically remind you of someone like Eric Gilbert or Kyle Pitts in terms of their build, where they're just a pure athlete at tight end who's just impossible to deal with when they're at their best. I would have taken the trade for Pimpton and Daylon Austin in a split second every time, 7 days of the week, twice on Sunday. I could not care less that we lost Daylon Austin with getting Kamorian Pimpton. Total non-factor. Pimpton is a huge, huge get, and I'm very, very excited about him. And for the most part, a very dramaless signing day for LSU, where you got one flip away, one flip two, but the rest you mainly held serve, with the one remaining factor being Desmond Rick's commitment tomorrow. LSU has a huge lead. Shea Dixon says he would be shocked if Ricks doesn't end up being a Tiger. Embody and Wilt Fong recently submitted crystal balls favoring him to LSU. He looks like an LSU get for sure, but this recruitment, it's been all over the place. Florida's in it. Bama's in it. LSU's the favorite, but it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be a battle, really. And it's a huge recruit. We need Ricks. We need 5 stars in that defensive backfield so bad. And he's the type guy, getting him over Bama and Florida, that's a program statement as well as a huge player need. So a big reason to look for his commitment tomorrow, December the 22nd. Going to be following that eagerly. Really, really hope that we can get him. That is going to be it for episode 5 of the Red Zone podcast. Hope you all enjoyed. If you're still here, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, follow me on my Linktree. Really appreciate all the views I've been getting. But until next time, so long. Bye, everyone.